Përshëndetje motra.
Music in the Art and the Trime podcast.
I'm Leonarda.
I'm Lejla.
Welcome home.
You're back.
Yes.
You left me for 2 weeks.
Well, what can I say?
2 whole weeks.
I know. You know what? I left for 2 weeks, but we were talking every day. I was still bothering you.
Well, I tried not to.
Yeah, I know you did. Because
I tried not to because I was like, let her rest,
Yeah.
let her be with her husband. She doesn't get to spend much
Yeah.
time with him. So I was like,
Yeah.
trying to handle the fire back
I
home
know,
in the comments fighting.
I know.
So I just knew how important,
Yeah.
just having the time with your husband is, because you guys don't get to spend much time together, always working.
Always working. We work alternate schedules. So I work 9 to 5, and then obviously in Trime during the evening. He works 8 to like 12 to 1 a.m. Weekends he works. I never see him on the weekends. So when we went on this holiday, we went for 10 days. It was more just to reconnect. You know, you can be together with someone for so many years. We've been together for 10 years, but we never really see each other because of work. We've got such alternate schedules and different passions. When we get home, it's like a high-buy situation.
Yeah.
Go to sleep, repeat. It's always on repeat. So this was so important for me and him to just reconnect with each other and be like, hey, ko gjøre?
I guess it's that sense of like regaining that intimacy back. And when I say intimacy, everyone immediately thinks like I'm talking about sex or physical intimacy. I actually mean that emotional intimacy, that emotional bond, the connection that the two of you have. And that's 100%. Why those times away they're just so needed.
So needed. I think they're the ones that make us so much stronger, because you actually have a conversation with your husband, like an hour conversation or 2-hour conversations with your partner. And I love to conversate. I mean, this podcast would not be alive.
I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we
love to talk.
Went viral just for talking.
Literally. And he loves to talk about all kinds of topics, and, you know, whether it's politics, whether it's Islam, whether it's, you know, Trime. We talk about Trime all the time. And he gives me so many ideas. I get to talk to my best friend.
That's it, isn't it?
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, me and Dan are exactly the same. Like, sometimes I look at other couples when they're like, they say how excited they are to spend time away from their partner. I'm like,
how?
I love being with Dan. I love being around her. I love the conversations we have. Like, me and Dan will be awake giggling till like 2-3 in the morning, just talking about anything and everything. So it gets like really, really deep, and then it will be like silly banter, like watching TikTok videos and just laughing. And that's a really common thing in my relationship with her, is just like keeping that intimacy going, that emotional connection.
Yeah, during my time on holiday, it was great to reconnect, and it really got me thinking about our relationship and what I've always been so curious about. And I've always told you, the only gay friend I have is you.
The only gay in the village.
And it's not because I've not chosen to be around gay people. It's just because I've never had the opportunity to have any gay like girlfriends. And so I've always had so many questions and just curiosity, because with gay men, I was brought up with one of the people that my dad works with. He's an Englishman, but he's gay, and I've known he's gay for like 20 years. I can always ask him questions, but with girls it's completely different, because I'm a girl myself, and I know emotions, and I know how we are.
Yeah. Well, you know, like every time we do an episode, we like to research the theme or the topic of the episode. And when I was researching, and this seems to be a reoccurring thing that happens for us, that this challenge that we keep coming across. But when I was researching stats to see, just the prevalence of abuse and violence, or just the experiences of gay Albanian women, no matter where they are in the world, couldn't find any. There was one research that was centered around the experience of gay Albanian men, but there wasn't anything for gay Albanian women. And I was just like, oh, why do I keep coming up against this every single time I'm researching the episodes and the themes?
Yeah, and that must be obviously difficult for you, which leads me to my question. How was your experience when you were coming out and actually coming to the reality that actually, you know what, I am a gay women.
So for me, I don't really like using the term like coming out.
Yeah.
So I use that term really loosely because it was never really about coming out to other people. I feel like the term coming out is more for like cis het people. It's to make them feel comfortable, because every time cis het people don't understand something, they get really defensive and they start spewing hate and violence towards the things that they don't understand, as if like they need to understand it. You don't have to understand it. You can just respect someone, right?
Yeah.
So for me, my kind of queer journey and coming out journey really started when I was about 15, 16. And I knew that I was attracted to girls at that age. But I also was in this thing like, I thought, nah, it can't be. Nah, it absolutely cannot be. I cannot be gay. Because first of all, I think the majority of times when we talk about being gay in our community, it's always focused on gay men again. And that's why there was no research to do with gay Albanian women. And so I kind of just put it to the back of my head and I thought, it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. And also knowing the amount of abuse and violence that gay people and queer people in our community face every single day, it was just like, nope, we're going to compartmentalize that, put it in the back of our heads, and we're just going to continue with life. And so I did. So I continued and dating in like, I guess, in a compulsory heterosexual normative lifestyle, right? So dating men. And it wasn't until the age of 30 that when I left my ex-husband, I started dating, and I was just like, something just kept stopping me every single time, kept stopping me from really feeling that true happiness. I knew that there was a part of my journey that I couldn't progress on because I was hiding a part of who I am.
Yeah.
And I was hiding it more so from myself. Like I was doing myself a disservice. I started just feeling really miserable. I was like, oh my God, is this the caliber of the dating pool in London? Because this is awful. This is absolutely horrific. And I kept having this conversation with myself, like, what is it? What is it? Maybe it's my own healing journey. Maybe I'm not going to therapy enough. But I was doing all of those things.
Yeah.
I was loving myself. And I was really learning to super enjoy my own company.
Yeah.
One thing about me is I love my own company, and I was enjoying dating myself and listening to my own needs and getting to know myself. But every single time I came up against this barrier, it was the fact that I was not allowing myself that space to be authentic. And one day I kind of just had this conversation with myself, and it sounds really simple, but it was a big epiphany and a big light bulb moment for me, where I was just like, you know why you're unhappy?
Yeah.
You know why you keep coming up against this wall, this brick wall? Because you're gay.
Yeah.
And for as long as you don't allow yourself that space to explore your sexuality, your identity in its truest form, you're not going to be able to progress in your life and in your own journey. And thankfully at that point in my life, and I understand the privilege that I have when I'm saying this, that it's a privilege that most queer Albanian people, whether they're women, men, non-binary, transgender, it's a privilege that a lot of our queer Albanian people don't have. But I had that privilege in my life where I'd created that safety. So I was away from any forms of abuse and violence, especially like within the community or family-wise and things like that. So it really was just as simple as like, Lejla, you're gay, like just get on with it.
And you probably made that solid when you actually went out and got into the relationships and explored your sexuality. What I mean by that is you proved to yourself, yes.
Absolutely. When I started dating women, it was just like, duh.
Just felt.
Yeah, everything fell into place. And it wasn't just about the fact that, you know, I was coming into my sexuality, but I was also coming into my own identity, that I had this queer identity, this gay identity that I'd never ever acknowledged for myself. And that's when I truly accepted who I am. That's when I truly started really loving myself. And this confidence almost came like so quickly. And I thought, oh my God, this whole time all I had to do was give myself the gift of being authentic.
That's great. I'm so happy for you.
Hey, do you know what? I love my life. Like, it took me such a long time to get to where I am, to accept who I am, to love who I am, to be authentic. And that's why I always say it wasn't about coming out. It was about letting other people in and letting other people see the real me. But that had to start with myself.
Yeah.
And I was just really fortunate that I had that privilege of being safe enough to do so as an Albanian person.
And then you met your partner.
Well, it wasn't that quick.
Oh, okay. Tell us.
Well, no, I spent a period of being single and dating, and that was a lot of fun. I loved it. Especially when you think about, like, imagine you'd been hidden away from something, like in the closet your whole entire life, and then you're finally like allowed into this world that is so fun and free. And that was my experience. I was really lucky. I had a really fun and freeing experience. For me, I finally felt like, oh my God, I'm home.
Yeah.
I'm home. Like, this is me. I belong here. I belong in this queer community. This is my sexuality. This is my identity. I'm finally the person who I have always wanted to be.
And do you think, just going off the back of that experience, do you think there are certain expectations as being gay in the queer community that certain groups have of you? Like, I don't know anything. Just treat me,
and so
treat me like a dumb person.
So this is the interesting thing that was a big like culture shock for me, because I had this assumption that like I was gonna come into the queer community and everyone was gonna be have this feminist mentalities and these gender roles don't exist. And actually, I was really shocked to find out that, you know, these heteronormative gendered roles were still practiced within the queer community. And there's still this expectations of, I can speak for lesbian relationships, of who's the man in the relationship. And I was really, really shocked actually to find that in and amongst the community, to find that mentality that it still exists in the queer community, because I've spent my whole life fighting against that. And that was really difficult for me actually to begin with.
That's interesting. And do you think you need to have a masculine, like one of the partners has to be masculine, one of the partners has to be more feminine for it to work?
No, absolutely not.
Because I mean, for me, I can, you know, I'm the feminine one and my husband's the masculine one. But in a lesbian relationship, I can only imagine both just being feminists. Like,
well, yeah, we're both women. Like, when people say things like, who's the man in the relationship? And we're like, well, neither, because we're both women. And that's the whole point. And I think that there's this big misconception about what femininity and what masculinity actually means. And in particular in our community, I do find that there's a big massive fear of femininity. So I think that a lot of gay Albanian men are faced with so much abuse and violence. That's because it's the fear of femininity. How dare a man show any kind of feminine traits, whereas maybe a woman who presents a bit more masculine is less of a threat. And that, again, that's because masculinity is celebrated in our community.
100%.
And masculinity in our community is very, very closely linked to violence. We think that men who are macho and, you know, alphas and violent are real men. They're the masculine ones. And so there's a lot to deconstruct about our mentality in the community, about what it means to be feminine and what it means to be masculine.
And it's also where the fantasy of, I want my husband to be the mafia boss, like... Do you know what I mean?
And I had that for such a long time. And here's the thing, right? So we're talking about intimacy. I struggled my whole dating life up until I started dating women to be intimate with men in an emotional sense. To feel safe with men. And I never understood it. And it wasn't until I started dating women that I was like, oh, okay, it really does make sense, because it was down to the fact that I was never attracted to men. I was just following this comp het lifestyle, which means that I was thrown into the world. And I believe that the only way for me to be was straight. I believe that the only way for me to move in the world was to be with men. And I never quite understood why I didn't actually like being in relationships with men, why I always felt unsafe. A lot of it was also to do with the fact that I'm not straight. I am 100% gay. And even when I first came out, I thought I was a bit like in this mindset, like, am I bi? Because I've dated men and now I like women. So I still had that mentality, like maybe I still like men. And I very quickly found out that I definitely don't. Like, I definitely don't. That I definitely just exclusively like dating women. But that moment was so freeing for me, because that was when I could truly start building intimate connections in any like romantic relationships that I had. I wasn't able to do that with men whatsoever.
That's great. And something that I'm always curious, because we're both girls. We know
You're just a girl.
We're just girls. We know our hormones. We know that we have 100 thoughts going on at once. And we know, I know for one that my husband, I tell him one thing and I actually mean something else. He'll only understand what I'm telling him, because men only see forwards. They don't see, like, women, that we can think, you know, so outside of the box. So how do you navigate the emotions between you and your partner, because you're both women? So how, you know, when it comes to the hormonal stages, how does that actually, without you setting the house on fire, like, how does it work?
Listen, oftentimes, sometimes we do. Do you know, it's funny because I hear a lot of straight women when they say, like, oh, I wish I was just a lesbian, I'd just date women, like, it'd be so much easier. Believe me, it's not easier. If you just imagine how you are yourself, you know, emotional, hormonal, all of these different things that you have, that you are experiencing as a woman, moving through life and navigating through life, is difficult as it is. Now imagine two of you in a relationship. Do you want to know what the biggest shock for me was when I met Dan and we got into a relationship? Was when we both had periods. I was like,
you synced?
No, it wasn't the syncing, because I'd never dated in a committed relationship with another person who had a period.
Oh, okay.
I was only with men.
So you
in committed relationships, you know. I dated women before I met Dan, but not committed, not serious relationships. So before my relationship with Dan, the relationships I'd had were with men. And so I, even just getting used to that for me was like, it was such a big shock. It was such a big shock. And you have to understand that if I'm PMSing, then my partner's going to be PMSing too. And I had to really quickly realize that in a female relationship, there has to be a lot of patience, a lot of understanding, a lot of compassion, and a lot of love between the two of you, because I want her to feel loved the same way I feel loved, the certain way that I want to be treated. And she's a woman. She wants to be treated the same way too. And that goes back down to those gendered norms, those stereotypes that people think when they see queer couples. They think, especially in lesbian relationships, they think that who's the man and who's the woman. No, we're both the women. Don't get that twisted. Neither of us are the man. That's the whole point. The whole point is that there isn't a man in the relationship. I don't know what you want from me.
And it works really well.
Oh my God. Well, my relationship works amazingly. Like, I've never, before meeting Dan, I never knew a love so soft, so gentle. Dan is just incredible. Like, she is so patient. She's the most caring person I've ever met in my whole entire life. Before I met Dan, I'd never been seen for who I truly was. Oh my God, I'm going to cry. I love you, babe.
Dan, we love you. We love you.
No one had ever really truly seen me for who I am. And finally, I met this woman who gave me the space just to be myself. I didn't have to mask. I didn't have to hide who I am. I'm just Lejla. Like, me and her are just the most silliest people together. Like, we're two little kids. Like, we our inner childs come out when we're together. Like, we are kiki-keying until 3-4 o'clock in the morning. We have the best dates. Like, it's just, I cannot explain the amount of joy I've had in my life since coming out.
And you can be your true self.
Absolutely, my true authentic self. And I feel like it's a really important part of, you know, my experience to bring to the podcast, because there's going to be so many queer Albanian people, and this isn't just about women. Like, I know we have just an incredibly beautiful queer following now, that they're here in the community and they are in the comments and they are in our DMs, and we love you all so much. And so this is very much about, I want them to feel really seen, that they're not alone. And I know what it was like for me, being that 15-year-old Albanian girl thinking, no, there's no way I can be gay. Like, absolutely not.
Of course.
Like, I didn't even think lesbian Albanian women existed.
It's because of the danger.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a thing. Like, I knew there would be gay Albanian men, but I was like, gay Albanian women don't exist. Albanian women are solely there to get married, have babies, cook, clean.
Yeah, literally.
Because that was the mentality that is driven into us. So it didn't even occur to me that I could be a lesbian. I just thought, oh, no, absolutely not. I've got to get married to a man and have babies and cook and clean.
I mean, I have never met a lesbian, like, just in the UK, being you know, an English lesbian, let alone an Albanian lesbian. For me, when I found out that you were a lesbian, I was like, wow, like, I can't wait to ask so many questions, because you're like, now I can learn. Not because, you know, not because I've shielded myself from not having lesbian or gay friends, it's just, you know, right time, right place kind of situation. So you just don't have that experience. So I'm happy you're sharing this with us and sharing
Well, I
this
feel
with
like
the
it's
podcast.
important to share happy, beautiful, queer Albanian experiences, because we know that there's so much violence for queer Albanian people. We know that. Like, when I was trying to research the stats, I was like, even if the research doesn't exist, we know it exists. We know, like, we know what the mentality is like in amongst our community when it comes to queer and gay people. We know the violent, the homophobic tropes, that the comments, the everything that is said. So I really just, as much as I wanted to touch on those horrific experiences, those lived experiences for the queer community, I also wanted to show that there is so much love and happiness in my life. There really is.
I'm so happy for you.
The thought of like a young gay Albanian person watching this and thinking there is like happiness out there for me. And there's a guy who's following us in Pristina, and he seems to be doing incredible work in and amongst the gay community over there. His name is Agon, and you know, I've been following his Insta now since he found Trime, which has been like the last month or so. And he sent us a message and he was like, listening to you ladies speak is allowing me to reconnect back to my community and back to my culture. And when he sent that message to me, I just burst into tears because that's exactly how I'd felt for such a long time, with all these different intersections, being a woman, being an Albanian woman, being a feminist, being a gay Albanian woman who's a feminist. Like, all of these things meant that I was so disconnected to the culture, to the community, because I just knew how much hatred was involved for people who have all of these intersections. And when he sent that message saying like, I just thank you so much for allowing me the space to reconnect back with the community and the culture, I just burst into tears, bruv. I was like, we need more happy stories. We need more happy queer stories, so that other Albanian people can see that there is such a happy life, that it's not doom and gloom, but at the same time acknowledging the real violence and the abuse that happens to gay Albanian people in the community.
Someone's sexuality is not a threat.
It's not, no.
It's
absolutely not.
It isn't a threat. And I say that as a practicing Muslim. I've said this to you. I don't care if you identify as an elephant. To me, I just don't care.
Sometimes I feel like one when I'm on my period.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. But it doesn't matter, because if you feel a certain way, you cannot change it. There is no fear, there is no threat that can change someone for how they feel. If they feel that way, they're going to feel like that way for the rest of their lives, and you've made their whole life miserable. They are going to hate you. They're going to hate you in when they die. They're going to hate you. They're always going to hate you, and they're always going to plot against you. Why would you want to do that?
Nothing good ever comes from things that are done out of fear.
I cannot imagine not feeling like part of the Albanian community. I cannot imagine not speaking Albanian every single day. I cannot imagine, going home and just feeling
it was tough. It was my reality for a really, really long time. Absolutely zero connection, no friends, no family. That's how I lived for a really long time. And it was only when I accepted myself that I finally was like, this shame that I've been brought up to feel about who I am is not mine.
No.
This shame does not belong to me. This shame belongs to the people who projected it onto me.
Exactly.
Maybe like morra per tu se nuk është morra per mu.
Exactly.
And when I really started believing that, and I started moving through the world and practicing a life that was true to me, that's when I was just like, yeah, this is it. Like, I don't care what anyone has to say about it whatsoever. This isn't about me coming out for the sake of other people. This is about letting other people in.
Did anyone surprise you with when you just accepted yourself and you were like, this is me, this is my life, this is me, this is... I've been singing that all day. This is me. TikTok.
Can you tell we have ADHD? I don't know if it's obvious. Both of us, undiagnosed ADHD, unmedicated.
One of the biggest questions I've got, and this is only because of my own obviously relationship, but I wanted to know, what are the biggest differences that you see now that you've had relationships with men and now you've got a relationship with Dan? What are the biggest differences between a straight relationship and a gay relationship?
Respect.
Yeah.
And when I actually started dating women, and when I met Dan and we were like in a fully committed relationship, that's where I realized that actually abuse, this might not be the answer that you were looking for, but this is the answer, that this is what's true to me, right? That's when I realized just how much abuse and violence towards women and girls is a choice perpetrated by men. Because I realized, just as I said, like how much patience and compassion is in a lesbian relationship, in particular in my relationship with my partner. And I remember when me and my girlfriend were getting to know each other, and I just realized, I was like, wow, like I've never known just so much like love and softness in anyone, right? And I realized that I had to give that back too.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to understand just how much abuse and violence I had experienced from men. And it was a really big wake up call for me, because I realized that to be with a woman, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's just a connection on a much deeper level. And I look at my girlfriend and just see all of this beautiful softness that I think how could I hurt you?
And do you think that's because women are not brought up in this, you need to be a masculine? Do you think it's because women are brought up to be soft-natured? Women are brought up, because there are so many different parts of our personality, because we think so differently to men, because, we've almost got a motherly instinct. I don't want to say soft without sounding like,
but
weak,
it is soft.
but do you know what I mean? Like soft, and we're just
nurturing and loving and caring.
Do you think it's because of that? Because how men are brought up in our community is, you need to be a man, you need to like take your fjorden and spe, you need to speak, you need to make decisions, your woman has to just abide by it. And do you think it's because women are not brought up like that?
Yeah, I do think that that kind of misogynistic way that we are nurtured as women, I do think that has a lot to play, that has a big part to play with actually how we then move in the world. 100%. Yeah, definitely. And that was the reason why, when my work started to get even more, I mean, my work has always been focused around women and, you know, helping women to safety and then providing recovery for survivors. And that is when my work actually got even deeper. Yeah. When I realized just how much care and nurture and respect that women truly deserve, my work just all of a sudden, I just zoned in. I became really tunnel visioned, and it was like nothing can stop me now, because I realized actually how much violence is really perpetrated towards women. Yeah. Because I needed to check myself, because I'd only ever been with men. So when you're in a heterosexual relationship, you have that false sense of femininity. Yeah. And that false sense of masculinity. But really, what does it actually mean for you to be feminine? What does masculinity actually mean, other than what you've just seen played out in relationships from your childhood up into your adulthood? Yeah. So when I, was in a committed relationship with a woman, I realized that that doesn't exist. Those gendered roles in our relationship doesn't exist. How am I going to move through this relationship that is true and loving to me and to my partner and to my daughter? And I got really angry for a long period, because I thought, how dare men treat women with so much disdain and with so much violence and abuse? And I never realized how much actually I loved my work until I was authentically living my best life. I say, like, that's how I describe it, because I realized just how much care that women deserve. Yeah. Like, I've built a life where it's so beautifully safe, and the men that are in my life are safe men. They're good men. Yeah. And the love I have for my work is the love I have for my sisters, for the sisterhood. Yeah. The love I have for Trime wasn't born out of hatred for men. No. It was born out of the love for my sisters in the community. Yeah. And that's how I move through my life now. Everything I do is with the women in the community, in both of my communities, whether
Yeah.
it's the survivors of domestic abuse or the women here in
Yeah.
Trime, it's with them at the forefront. It's with them at the centre of everything we do here.
No, 100%. 100%. And I think it's not about hating men at all, because I'm married to a man. Like, I wouldn't be here if I hated
I was
men.
married to one. It sucked.
Yeah.
0 out of 10 would not recommend.
But it's when you were brought up in a household where there are gender roles, you know, my mum cooked, cleaned, raised 5 kids. My dad worked. He was basically the decision maker for everything. And the same happened at my husband's household. The same happens everywhere. Like, it's millions of our generation experience that. But I think when you have a good person, it doesn't even matter what gender they are. When you've got a good person as your partner and they're like, I do not want that bullshit
Absolutely.
in my house.
Absolutely.
It's a whole different ball game. My husband is, first of all, the love of my life. Second of all, my best friend, and I would fucking die for him, and he would do the same for me. And he is my number one priority, and I'm his number one priority at the church. It's the fact that my husband has chosen me over everything that's in our culture. That means me and my husband work for each other. We have future plans, and they're for us.
Yeah, and this goes back to that, what the mentality is in our community of what it takes to be feminine and what it takes to be masculine. That whole kind of violence is masculinity. It's absolutely not. Like,
exactly,
it's absolutely okay for men to show emotion, but the thing
100%.
is this is when people, especially in the community, talk about, oh, you dirty feminist, or like, feminist this, feminist that, you know, you're never going to be loved, you're miserable. And it's like, I think in our community that the whole idea of femininity and feminism as a movement is completely lost.
Yeah, it's
completely lost, and it goes over people's heads.
Yeah.
But the patriarchy is very damaging for men too. In our community, that's completely lost. They don't understand that.
They don't understand it. In our community, men are raised to be children at the age of 35. That's how men are raised. They're raised in this mentality that a woman has to cook, clean, do everything for me. A woman has to come behind me. A woman has to chase me. She has to have my babies. She has to do his match. She has to be my nosa, which is the
well,
worst.
then it's not a wife you want. It's a slave or a servant or a housemaid or a homemaker that you want
for free.
Because in a partnership or a marriage, any kind of unity you have, regardless of gender, regardless of sexuality, if there's no intimacy, you don't have a relationship.
No, exactly.
You don't.
You just don't. And
you just have people somehow serving each other.
Exactly.
For cooking, for cleaning, for having children. There's no intimacy in that. And that's my point. When we talk about intimacies, we think that intimacy is just about sex and hugs and kisses. No, intimacy is so much deeper than that. And the reason why, for me, I could never connect and be intimate with men like that was because I was never meant to date men in the first place.
Exactly.
Was because men couldn't offer me what I really needed.
Yeah.
It was that I only found that in women.
Yeah.
Sexuality is not a choice.
Exactly.
Like, you don't just wake up one day and you're like, oh my God, I'm gay. No. And then the next day you're like, I'm straight. That's not how it works. If that's how it was. That's not how it works.
We would all be doing it.
Right. Like, that's not how identity and sexuality works whatsoever. Like, it's 100%. Not a choice. And I really... That was my experience 100%, that building that intimacy meant respecting my partner, meant loving my partner. It meant really having that emotional deep connection and deep bond, because I listen to her, I hear her out, I support her to the best of my ability for her, any needs that she has, like anything, whatever it is in our relationship, we have that safe space to support each other and that safe space to just talk.
Yeah, because that's what you need. You need to vent. You need someone to just talk to. And I remember when we started speaking, we both said this to each other, and I was like, each time I go home, or each time my husband comes home, my whole body, from literally the top of my head to my tippy toes, it just relaxes.
That's exactly how I feel when I'm around Dan.
And that's what love is.
That, honestly, like, and I never experienced that until I met Dan. Like, I never experienced being with something that was just so safe. Like, when Dan comes home from work, I instantly fall asleep.
Yeah.
And before I met her, actually, I've always struggled with my sleep anyways. PTSD, it's always, I'm always having issues with my sleep. But when Dan comes home from work, I'm like, I can relax now. I can rest. And within 10 minutes, I'll be asleep.
Exactly.
And that is actually, there's this thing, and it's like a chemical that your brain releases. This thing where, like, when you're around the person you really feel safe and you truly love, your body relaxes. Because I just kept thinking, like, why do I fall asleep every time Dan comes home? 10 minutes, I'm done. Like, I'm gone. I'm asleep, fast asleep. But and I started reading about it. I was like, why do I feel like this around my partner? And it was just about the fact that I feel so safe around her.
But just imagine, like, that's the best radar you need. Like, that's all you really need to prove to yourself that actually this is the person I should be with. 100%. So you committed to the relationship with Dan. How did you come to introduce Dan to Bella, and how was that whole experience? Because I know obviously Bella is so outspoken and she's so intelligent.
I don't know if anyone's ever met my kid yet.
She's a child that we all wish we had.
100%. She absolutely is. I totally live vicariously through her. You know what's so funny is before I even told Bella that I'm gay, she figured it out herself. But this is how connected me and my child are.
Yeah.
I never talk about my dating life with Bella.
Yeah.
Not once. Like, I have a very firm boundary. I have a very open relationship with Bella in the sense that we talk about our emotions, like we talk about a lot of things that maybe other parents wouldn't. But when it came to me dating, I never spoke about that with Bella. I needed that privacy for myself, and I just didn't want her to think of her mum in that way. Anyway, one day, this was actually after I'd met Dan, but I hadn't introduced Dan and Bella yet. As I was hot-footing out the door, actually to go on a date with Dan was taking me to a Stormzy concert.
Oh.
Actually one of the best dates I've ever had. So anyway, Bella was like, Mum, can I ask you something? And I was like, uh-oh, shit. Was she about to ask me? Because Bella does this, like, and when she says, can I ask you something? I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be a big question. And she said, are you a lesbian? And I was like, I didn't really know how to answer it because I was like, I'm just about to hot foot it out the door. And I said, you know what, Bells? I don't have time to have this conversation with you right now, but can we have this conversation when we've got more time? Like maybe when I come back tomorrow and we'll sit down and have this chat. She knew before I even told her.
Yeah.
And I don't know how.
Kids are
but it's just how linked me and my daughter are.
Kids can feel stuff.
Yeah.
Kids know stuff. And if you think about it, as a mum, you probably know stuff about Bella that she doesn't know.
Oh my God, 100%. My child thinks that I was born yesterday. Like, she thinks I know nothing. She thinks I was never a kid. I was never a teenager. But so then when it came to introducing her and Dan, I was just scared.
Yeah.
It was the first person I was introducing to her after leaving my ex-husband. The first person that was going to come into her life as like a serious person, you know, a serious committed relationship. And so I was really nervous because I'm like, what if this doesn't last? Yeah. And then I've introduced my child to another adult. Yeah. And what if she forms an attachment? And all of these things were running through my head.
Because you're a parent.
In fact, I remember on a date with Dan, I remember saying to her, God, when I think back now, like I laugh because of how the relationship between Dan and Bella now is just insane. But I remember saying to Dan, I was so scared, you know, at the thought of someone else coming into our lives because I'd built this bubble. This bubble of safety, and it was just me and Bella. Nobody could penetrate it. And then all of a sudden Dan came along and it was like, like for me it was breathtaking. Yeah, and it was like, fuck, what do I do? Because I feel like this person is coming into our bubble. Like
you don't want to give it up.
Yeah, like I was scared because I had to build so much safety for me and Bella after leaving her dad, right? For, you know, away from abuse and violence. And so when I realized that actually this is someone I want to be with long term, I thought, okay, like how am I going to navigate this? And so I remember we were at dinner and I was saying to Dan, I was like, I'm the mum, you don't ever have to do anything. She's my kid. I make all the decisions. So, you know, I'm going to introduce you to her, but, you know, I never expect anything from you, like blah, blah, blah. And I was really like, I feel so mean now because I was so firm and like really a little bit cold when it came to that, but it was purely out of fear.
And she probably understood that.
Do you know what? This is what I mean. Dan is the most patient person, the most understanding person. She was like, I get it. Like, she's your daughter. She's your number one priority. She should be your number one priority. And so when I did introduce Dan and Bella, we introduced Dan as a friend to begin with. And so, you know, we would go on like lunch dates together, and then sometimes Dan would come over and we'd play games or like we'd have movie nights and things like that. But my daughter's not stupid.
Yeah.
She very quickly cottoned on to the fact that this is not just mummy's friend. Ooh, friend. Mummy's friend. we went out for lunch one day, and we were playing like Truth or Dare or something, and Bella, it came to her turn and she said, this is a good while after they met. So at this point, we still weren't like, we're a couple. We were just like, we're friends.
Yeah.
And she said, I dare you and mummy to kiss. And we were like, well, what do we do? Because this actually is a really good opportunity for us to say, yeah, actually we are together. Like we are a couple. So we did. We just literally gave each other like a really quick peck. And then she was like, I knew it. I knew it. And for us, we were like, how did she figure it out? But now, obviously, me and Dan have been together nearly 3 years. And now Bella will say, because you were so happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the way that you two were around each other was not just like normal friends. Like you were both so happy. But Bella was like, this, I could see that it wasn't just a friendship.
She's so smart. Good for her.
This is what I'm saying. Like nothing gets past my daughter whatsoever. Even her new head teacher said that to me. She was like, she's really assertive and really confident. I was like, I know.
Bella for president.
Literally, Bella for president. So yeah, it was scary. It really was scary. But, we're 3 years into our relationship now, and Dan and Bella have formed their own beautiful connection. Like for the longest time, Bella would say, I don't call Dan my stepmom, because she had this view of like what a step parent is like. Like in the films, like step parents are like evil and horrible. Yeah. And she wouldn't class Dan as like a step parent. But the more that their relationship has grown and blossomed, she's like, yeah, that's my stepmom. Yeah. She tells people at school, say, yeah, that's my stepmom.
Dan must be so honoured.
Yeah. Like you don't understand, like that if you need to see them, you need to be around them just to feel their energy. It's almost as if like they were 100% supposed to be, as if they've known each other in other lifetimes.
But also for Bella, she has someone that now relates to her.
Yeah.
Because also Bella's mixed race.
Yeah.
So now she sees a woman that is actually she can relate to.
Yeah, and she sees herself represented in our home. So there's black woman here. Well, our hairs are very similar. Our skin tones are brown, and for her, that's made the biggest difference in Bella's life as well. Like having that nurturing person in her life who's a woman and who's also black Bella thrives. And a lot of that I attribute to the relationship that Dan has with her. Like the amount of care and attention that Dan puts into Bella it's insane. It's unmatched.
Yeah.
And that's where me and Dan work so well together, is that she has so many strengths that are my weaknesses and I have so many strengths that are her weaknesses, and we just balance each other out.
That's what a relationship is.
Thank you. That's what a relationship is.
My last question is, are you happy? I know you are, but like I have to ask this question because I want you to answer it.
I am honestly the happiest I've ever been in my whole entire life.
I'm so happy.
I've never experienced happiness on this level, on this scale. I couldn't now. I look back at my old life and I don't recognise that person. I don't know who she is. If you'd have met Lejla even 5 years ago, I was a shell of who I am now.
That's amazing.
And I have to like do a little bit of a Snoop Dogg and be like, I thank myself. Like I do. Do you know what I went through? The trenches, like
of course.
The absolute trenches to be here. Like that metamorphosis journey that I took on for myself was hell.
Of course.
It was pure and utter hell. I've come out the other end, thankfully, in just being exactly who I am and with the love and the safety in my life that I deserve. And I do want to preface here as well that my queerness isn't validated by the fact that I'm in a queer relationship. And I want a lot, like any queer Albanian person listening to this, to hear that you don't have to be in a queer relationship, because there's going to be so many Albanian people who listen to this who are too scared to come out, who have to live their whole life closeted. And I just want them to know that they're so valid, that their queerness is so real and so valid, and that it's not about being in a relationship in the same sex or whatever your partner is that you're queer and that's who you are. If there's one thing that I refuse to do in Trime is act like queer Albanian people don't exist, because we do.
Yes, you do.
We absolutely do.
You do. And we don't. Trime does not discriminate against anyone.
No. I mean, like, you've seen it, like in our comments, like it's the gay men who are coming in.
Literally.
And who have got our backs in the comments.
Literally.
They're the ones coming in who are like fighting our corner. They're the ones 100%. Who are reposting our content. They're the ones who are in our DMs supporting us and telling us, keep going, girls. Like, this is amazing. Like, 100%. They're the big gay influencers who are reposting reposting our TikToks.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the success that we've had is actually with TikTok in particular is attributed to the fact that the community keep reposting our content because it's so real and it's, you know, and they relate to it. And now there is this, you know, portion of our community that is queer.
Yeah.
I want to touch on something actually just to kind of end this episode. And I really want to acknowledge how much grief is involved in coming out, in being gay, or actually having to live your life closeted. And so this journey that I took on for myself involved, whilst it's really happy and loving and safe now, it involved a lot of grieving. And when I say by grieving, it wasn't that I was scared that I was going to lose people. I'd already lost at that time. I was already outcasted. I'd already lost what I thought was everything.
Yeah.
And not realising that rebuilding my life again, I started grieving for the fact that I hadn't done it sooner.
Yeah.
I started grieving for the 16-year-old Lejla who was just so I'm not going to cry. I'm going to make it without crying.
It doesn't matter. You can cry.
I started grieving for that Lejla, like how much happiness that I denied myself.
Yeah.
And also so much grief for so many gay Albanian people that don't get the chance to feel this happiness. And it makes me sad. I just hope that by hearing my story, so many queer people in the community they just feel seen. I really, really hope so. And I just want them to know that there's so much happiness in being queer.
Yeah.
And you can be Albanian and you can be queer.
100%.
And there's so much happiness in it.
There's so much.
And I really hope with Trime we can showcase that link to the community and that link to the culture, that it doesn't matter what intersection you have in your identity, that Trime is here.
There are people that probably live in an unsafe place and have to
That's my point. They have to hide it. They don't have the luxury. They don't have a choice.
We're here for you. We are your sisters. We are here. You can listen to us and just feel seen and heard and know that you're not alone.
You're not alone. You 100% are not alone.
100%.